Today we are going into musical notes, and we're going to look at what is a musical note, how to read notes, what do the notes mean, okay? That's what we're studying today. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free in the middle of my discussion to just raise your hand and ask your question. All right. Okay, so let's go. So we are looking at music notes. So a music note, what is a music note? It's a symbol that is used to represent music sounds. Another way to put it is a single music sound is written as a note. So you know that a music note, we generally hear music notes. Whenever we listen to music, you're hearing music notes. Okay, but when you want to, music notes, basically, when you write it down, it's a visual way of reading the note. So that's what a musical note is. A musical note, or musical notes, are symbols that are used to represent the sound, the musical sound. Okay, so we, in short, we just generally call it a note. Okay, so a note is characterized by two main important things. Whenever you see written music, the note on a piece of music will tell you the pitch. Okay, the note would have a pitch, which means how high or how low the note is. And it will also have a duration. The note should also tell you how long the note lasts. Okay. So in written music, the pitch of a note is determined by the clef, the key signature, and its placement on the staff. So let me draw here so that it's clear. Okay, so when you write music, the pitch of a note is determined by the clef. Remember what the clef is? This one. The key signature, which is this one. Bunch of sharps and flats at the beginning. And then the note, the pitch of the note is also determined by its placement on the staff. So for example, these are music notes. This is a music note. 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 Okay? So the pitch of a note is determined by where it is placed on the staff. So this note here it's lower on the staff than this note here. This note is higher on the staff. So that means that this note has a lower pitch, but this note has a higher pitch. Okay. All right. Likewise, this note here is on a different level. It's in the middle of the staff. The pitch is different from this one, which is also higher than this one, higher than it. So this note here is higher in pitch than this note. This note is lower in pitch than that note. This note is higher in pitch than this note. Okay? All right, so all these are notes, music notes, and where they are placed on the staff will tell you the pitch of the note. And then also what tells you the pitch is the clef, in this case, the treble clef, and the key signature, like we considered last week. All right, does that make sense? Is that clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so we've looked at a pitch. Remember, I told you at the beginning, we said here a pitch, a note is characterized by two things. Number one, its pitch, okay, which is what we've discussed here. How do you know the pitch of the note? Well, you have to look at the clef, the key signature, and then where it is placed on your staff. That will determine the pitch of the note. Now, the second part of what describes a note is the duration. The duration will tell you how long does this note last in terms of time. So that as you're singing, you want to know how long do you hold that note? Do you hold it for a very long time, or do you hold it for a very short time? That is what we call the duration of the note. Okay, so the duration of the note is determined by the tempo. When in written music, when you see written music on a sheet music like this is the tempo. This one is the tempo. That's the tempo symbol. Okay, we'll go into more, we'll describe what it means in detail later, but for now, just know that that's the tempo symbol. It tells you how fast a note, or the how many beats per minute is assigned to a type of note. Okay, and then the duration of a note is also determined by the time signature. If you remember from our first class, this is the time signature. We'll go into detail later as to what the 4 and the 4 mean. Okay, and then the duration of the note is also determined by what the note looks like. So you could see that this note here looks different from this note here, which also looks different from this note or this note. Okay, so the way the note looks also tells you the duration of the note, how long the note lasts for. Okay, so you look at the, so if you want to know how long am I supposed to hold this note for, first of all, you need to look at one, the tempo. Sometimes you may see some piece of music that doesn't have a tempo, but just has a time signature. That's fine. Okay, but in standard music, you would always see a sheet of music that has a tempo. It has a time signature, and then the shape, the type of the note, or the way the note looks would then determine how long each note should last. Is that clear? Okay. Okay, so now let's look at the shape of the note, and let's talk a bit more about the shape of the note, what the note actually looks like. So now this is a picture here showing you two types of notes, just to describe and to label notes, because it's important to know when I mention some certain terminologies, you need to be able to understand what I'm referring to. So when we talk about a note has a couple of components. We've got the head. There's something that's called the head. The head is this part of the note that looks like a circle shape here. Okay. In some notes, you see that the head is not filled in, so has a white space inside. Okay. In other cases, you see the head filled in black, with a shaded black. So this is called the head of the note. Okay. Now, a note also has what we call a stem. A stem is just the vertical part here. Okay. So this note here is basically, you could reverse the direction. So the stem could be pointing downwards, or it could be pointing upwards, okay? The direction of the stem doesn't really matter, doesn't really tell you anything, doesn't really give you any significant information. Whether a stem goes up or down would determine when will be determined depending on when you're writing the music. But we'll come to that later. Okay. Then a note can have what we call a flag. See, this here is called a flag. Okay. It could have more than one flag. It could have 2 flags. It could have 3 flags. But the number of flags will tell you how long that note should last for. We'll discuss that in detail in the next couple of slides. And then a music note can have a dot. Now this dot always follows the head of the note. Okay, so sometimes you may see some other dots in other places, but those other dots they have different names. They're not specific to the note. But when we describe a note can have a dot, and that dot usually follows the head. So you can have the dot that comes immediately after the head. So here you can have, sometimes you can also have a dot here, but it always follows the head. You won't find it in any other place but directly after the head. That is the dot. Okay? So a note has a head, a stem, a couple of flags, and may or may not have a dot following it. Is that clear? Are we there? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so let's go on. So the pitch of the note depends on what line or space the head of the note is on. So when we want to know, when we look at a piece of music, we are more interested, in order to know the pitch of the note, we are interested in knowing where does the head lie. Does it lie on a line or a space? That will tell you what the pitch of the note is. Okay. Now, if the note does not have a head, it means that it does not have a definite pitch. So if you see a piece of music and you see a note that doesn't have a head, it just tells you that there's really no pitch assigned to the note. Where would you find a type of note like that? Typically for drummers, people that play drums, when they have the piece of music, they typically won't have a pitch, because a drum doesn't really have a pitch, so to say, in terms of the music notes like do, re, mi, or C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, that kind of thing. What drum sets, or what the drummer needs to know is basically the beat, or how often he should tap something. So typically when you see the music score of the drummer, it won't have a head. It will just have, the notes will just be arranged just to indicate the beat of the drum. Okay? Now, the head of a note, like we've said, may be filled in black, or it may not be filled in. That would also tell you the duration of the notes. We'll come to that later. The note may have a stem, so a stem here. It may have one or more flags, so like the flag as like we mentioned here. It may also have a beam that connects 2 notes together. We'll look at the beams later. It may have one or more dots. So this dot, like we discussed, you could have one dot, you could have two dots sometimes, but typically you'd see a dot, and the dot always follows the head. So all of these affect how much time a note is given in a music. So whether the head is filled in or not, whether the note has a stem and a flag, whether the note has a dot, all of these determine how much time a note is given in music. All right, so now let's go look at the duration of a note. How do we know how long a note lasts? So traditionally in music, there are 8 types of music notes. They're called the breve, the semi-breve, the minim, the crotchet, the quaver, the semiquaver, the demi-semiquaver, the hemi, demi, semiquaver. Okay? So these are the 8 types of notes you'd see in music. The hemi, demi, semiquaver, not very common, but you would come across them in quite classical music, especially those very fast pieces of music. You would come across them. But generally in our GHS, in the GHS booklet, you generally find the semi-breve, the minim, the crotchet, the quaver, the semiquaver, and the demi-semiquaver. Okay? So now we're going to look at each of these types of notes, and we're going to look at their symbols, what they look like, so that when you see them in music, you know what you'll be able to recognize them. All right? So the first one we are going to look at is called the semi-breve. Now the semi-breve looks like an egg, like an oval-shaped egg that is not filled in. So it's a round open note, open because it's not shaded black completely. So it looks like an egg, called a semi-breve. It's also called a whole note. Okay? And it lasts for 4 beats. Okay, so basically this lasts for 4 beats. So it tells you how long this note lasts. Now, when we talk about beats, for now, just a beat is, for now, you can determine a beat to be anything. A beat could be something like that. So that's a beat. So if you just snap your fingers, that's a beat. So a semi-breve would last for 4 beats. So how would I explain that? So if that sounds, can you hear that? Can you hear the snapping of my finger? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you hear the snapping of my finger, if that's a beat, that's 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So when you see a note like that looks like a semi-breve, it lasts for 4 beats, meaning that the moment you either sing the note or you play the note, or if you're playing an instrument, you play and hold that note for 4 beats. Okay, so for example, if I'm playing a song or singing a song or playing a note on the keyboard or a violin, and the note, let's say, is a la, okay, and I come to a semi-breve, the la must sound for 4 beats. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then my la, when I hit the semi-breve, must go la. Do we get that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the semibreve lasts for 4 beats. And it's also called a whole note. So now, and all other note lengths are defined by how long they last compared to this whole note. So all the other notes we're going to see, they are all defined basically relative to this whole note or to the semibreve. All right, so let's look at the next note. The next note is called a breve. Now, if this is a semibreve and it's a whole note and it lasts for 4 beats, a breve looks like this. It looks like a semibreve, but it's got 2 slashes on either side. Okay, in modern music, this is the way you'd see it: 2 slashes and a semibreve in between. Okay, it's called a double whole note. Okay, so if it's double a whole note, means that if this is a whole note and this is a double whole note, means that if the whole note lasts for 4 beats, then the double whole note must last for what? 8 beats. So basically twice as long as the whole note. All right. Okay. So if you take if I should explain that. So if we have a beat, that's 1 beat. So this breve, when you see it in music and you sing the note there or you play the note there, it should last for 8 beats. So so it should go la. 8 beats. Do we understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's the breve. Now, the next note we're looking at is the minim. The minim is an open note, open because it's not shaded, it's not filled in. It's an open note with a stem. And the stem could either go upwards or downwards. So whether it goes upwards or downwards doesn't really change anything about the minim. It could be up or down, doesn't matter. The main thing is that it's an open note and it's got a stem. Okay, so the minim is also called a half note. Remember, whenever these note names, they're named relative to the whole note. So this is a whole note, this is a half note. So what does that mean? It means that its duration is half as long as a whole note. And if a whole note is 4 beats, therefore the minim or the half note is half of that, which is 2 beats. So therefore the minim lasts for 2 beats. Okay? So again, my example. If this is a beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If that's your beat, okay, then a minim will last for 2 beats. So if I go with my la example, la, 2 beats. Again, I'll do it again. La. Does that make sense? All right, so that's a minim, also called a half note, and it lasts for 2 beats. Now, the next note we are going to look at is a crotchet. Now, a crotchet is a black note, so meaning it's not an open note, it's a black note because it's shaded black, with a stem, that can also either go up or downwards. It's also called a quarter note. Okay? It's called a quarter note because it lasts for a quarter of a whole note. Okay? So it's a quarter note because it lasts for a quarter of a whole note. Now, if a whole note lasts for 4 beats, therefore the crotchet, which is a quarter note, lasts for a quarter of 4 beats, which means that a quarter note lasts for 1 beat. Does that make sense? So this crotchet, this is what it looks like, or like this. Sometimes you'll see it. The quarter note, it's a quarter note because it lasts, it's a quarter of the whole note. And if a whole note lasts for 4 beats, therefore the quarter note or the crotchet will last for 1 beat. So if this is a beat, 1 beat, 2 beats, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's your beat. So therefore the crotchet, if you're playing a crotchet or singing a crotchet note, you must sing it for exactly 1 beat. So la, 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 la. Is that clear? Because the sound must go for exactly 1 beat. If it goes beyond 1 beat, then it's no longer a crotchet. So if I go la, 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 then that's not a crotchet anymore. Because now I've held the note for more than 1 beat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Newton, are you following? Okay. All right, good. So now let's go to the next note. Now, a quaver. A quaver is a black note with a stem and a tail. So there you can see here. It's a black note with a stem and a flag. Some people call it flags, some people call it tail. Okay, so stem, tail, or flag, and then the black note. Okay, it is also called an eighth note, not eighth, eighth. So 1/8. It's an eighth note because it lasts for an eighth as long as a whole note. Remember, everything is with respect to the whole note, which is this one. So the quaver is also called the eighth note because it lasts for an eighth as long as a whole note. So if it lasts for an eighth, 1/8 of this note, therefore, and this note, this whole note is 4 beats, therefore your quaver lasts for half beats. Okay, so let me explain that again. Your whole note is equal to 4 beats. Okay, therefore a quaver is going to be equal to, is an eighth note, meaning that the number of beats is going to be 4 beats, which is the 4 beats here, divided by 8. When you divide 4 beats by 8, how many beats do you get? Archippus? How many beats do you get when you divide 4 beats by 8?
Oh.
Half.
Half. Thank you. You get half beat. So that is the quaver. The quaver lasts for half beat. So whenever you see this in music, you know that when you play it or you sing it, you must only sing it for half a beat. So if this is your beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're 1, 2, 3, 4. When you see a quaver, you must only sound your quaver for half the time. So basically, when you hear the beat, you must only sing your quaver half of the duration between your beats. So that's your beat. La, la, la. You hear that? A crotchet is a 1 beat. So the crotchet here is 1 beat, like we've discussed. So the crotchet is 1 beat. So it lasts for 1 beat. 1, la, 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 la. But your quaver is half a beat. So it's la, 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 la. Does that make sense? Temperance, is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Darasimi, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Dunsin, how about you? Is Dunsin there?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's clear.
Okay. Newton, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So the next note we are going to look at is the semi-quaver. Okay. Semi-quaver. So the semi-quaver is a black note with a stem and 2 tails or 2 flags. It is also called a 16th note, not and 16th English. It's a 16th note. There. Okay, so it's a 16th note and it lasts for a quarter of a beat. Again, how do you come to that quarter of a beat? How do we know it's a quarter of a beat? Again, remember everything, the note is a 16th note because it lasts for a 16th as long as a whole note. So if a whole note is 4 beats, always it's 4 beats, okay, then the 16th note is going to be 4 beats divided by 16, which gives you 1/4 beats. Okay, so it means that this is even shorter. So when you're playing it, it's very snappy. It's a snappy sound, like very instantaneous, very fast. When you see it in music, when you see this semi-quaver in a piece of music, also depending on the time signature as well and the tempo, this can be very fast. So whenever you see notes like that. Okay, then finally, second to last, the demi-semi-quaver. The demi-semi-quaver is a black note with a stem and 3 flags or 3 tails. It is also called a 32nd note. It's a 30-second note because it lasts for a 30-second as long as a whole note. So if a whole note lasts for 4 beats, then the 30-second note would last for 1/8 beats. So that's even faster, even very shorter in duration. And then lastly, the hemi-demi semiquaver is a black note with a stem and 4 tails, 4 flags. It's called a 64th note because it lasts 64th as long as a whole note. So if a whole note is 4 beats, then the hemi-demi semiquaver or the 64th note would last for a 16th of a beat. All right. So those are the notes, the 8 types of notes you'd see in music. All right. Now let's look at how you, when you put these together, what it looks like. So okay, but before we do that, let's look at just a summary of the notes quickly. So you've got your brief, semi-brief, the minim, crotchet, quaver, semiquaver, demi, semiquaver, hemi, demi, semiquaver. This is the semi-brief, like an open round note. It's called a whole note as well. The brief is a double whole note. Looks like a whole note with 2 bars beside it. A minim is an open note with a stem, also called a half note. It's half as long as a whole note, and it lasts for 2 beats. The crotchet, the black note with a stem, is also called a quarter note. An 8th note is a black note with a stem and a tail. Okay, it's an 8th as long as a whole note. A semiquaver, also called a 16th note, looks like that. A demi semiquaver is a 32nd note. Okay, looks like that with a stem with 3 tails and a black note. And a hemi-demi semiquaver, or a 64th note. All right, now let's look at the duration of notes. Now, you'll notice that they're all related by duration. So let's look at this, for example. When you see a piece of music like this, this is your whole note. This is your whole note. A whole note is equal to 2 half notes. Okay, notice that notice the bar lines, right? In each bar, okay, in each bar, you have a certain number of notes, but there are different types of notes in each bar. In the first bar, you have a whole note. This is the first bar, second bar, third bar, or measure, some people call it, fourth bar. Okay, or fourth measure. So, in the first bar, you have a whole note. Okay? In the second bar, you have 2 half notes. Now, when you have 2 half notes, it's 2 half notes in the same bar is the same as having 1 whole note, just like in the first note, in the first bar here. Okay? Then in the third bar, you then have quarter notes. 4 quarter notes is equal to 2 half notes, which is equal to 1 whole note. So meaning that the duration of this note is equal to the duration of these two notes, which is equal to the duration of these four notes. Meaning that if you see this note, it means that if you sing this for 4 beats, then you sing this one for 2 beats and 2 beats, making 4 beats. But then if you come to the third one, you sing this one for 1 beat, 1 beat, 1 beat, 1 beat, making 4, which is 4 beats total. Okay, so that's why 1 whole note is equal to 2 half notes is equal to 4 quarter notes. You see the pattern. So this one is basically a half, which is equal to, and this one is equal to another half, which these, and then these two equal to a whole. Do you see the pattern? Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, the same thing here. These 2 half notes is equivalent to 1 whole note. Okay. Now let's look at the fourth bar now. Here you have 8th notes. Remember, the 8th notes, or the quaver, is a black note with a stem and 1 flag, or 1 tail. This is an 8th note. Okay. Now, in this bar, we have how many 8th notes? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, the difference between this type of 8th note and this note is just the beam. This is a beam. This beam is just a tail that is just extended to join to extend it to join the 2 notes. So this note is the same as this note. Okay, it's just that these 2 notes are joined by a beam, but they're still 8th notes. This is an 8th note. This is also an 8th note. It's just that they're joined, the flags have been joined together to form a beam. Okay, so that's why this is still 8th notes. These are still 8th notes. Okay, so in this bar we have 8 8th notes. And remember, an 8th note, 4 of this, okay, sorry, let me clear that. Let me erase this so that makes more sense. 2 8th notes give you 1 quarter note. 2 8th notes gives you 1 quarter note, or a crochet. 2 8th notes, 1 quarter note. 2 8th notes, 1 quarter note. Okay, and then 2 quarter notes gives you a half note. 2 quarter notes gives you half note, and 2 half notes give you a whole note. So you see the hierarchy here. So it's like division. It's like you're just dividing and dividing and dividing by 2s as you go along. A whole note is 2 half notes, and a half note is 2 quarter notes, and a quarter note is 2 8th notes. Understand? Is that clear? Okay, says yes. Temperance and Achiko say yes. Newton, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right, Darasimi and Dunsin, Am I making sense, or is it confusing?
Yes, sir.
Hmm?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's clear, or yes, it's confusing.
Yes, sir.
I can't hear you. Yeah, okay, it's clear. Good. All right, so now let's go to the next slide quickly. Our time is almost up, and there's another class after this. Okay, so we made mention of notes with beams, eh? Remember in the previous slide, we saw these things that had beams, and I told you that the beam here, this single beam, is also an eighth note. So sometimes you see this in music that instead of writing, you see in this piece of music here, instead of writing multiple, for example, in this case, this note with two flags is what is this called? Temperance. The note with two flags, what did we say it was?
It's a semiquaver.
Semiquaver, good. All right, what's the other name for the semiquaver?
It's a 16th note.
It's a 16th note, good. So if you have a piece of music like this and you have a series of 16th notes all following each other like this, instead of writing them individually with their stems individually, what you can do, you typically see this in music, that the stems are joined together to form what we call beams, and that's what you have here. So this are a group of 4 16th notes that are joined together by beams, and then a second group of 16th notes also joined together by beams. Okay, but the number of beams will be the same as the number of flags, so that you can know whether this is a 16th note or a quarter note or not. Okay, so this is what they just did here. They just joined the 16th note by beams. Now the same thing here. Sometimes you'd see a quaver, then a semiquaver, two semiquavers, or three semiquavers, followed by another quaver, and then a semiquaver. So another way to write that using beams is you see it like this. The semiquaver has a single beam that joins the two, the quaver has a single beam that joins the two semiquavers, which is what you see here. So these two semiquavers here is what you have here. Okay, and then the single beam at the top is just this quaver, which is the first quaver here. Then you'd have followed by this semiquaver, which is that one there. You could see it's got the main beam followed by the second beam, which is shorter because it doesn't join to the next one, because the next one is supposed to be just a quaver and not a semiquaver. So the quaver has only one beam. So the second beam here doesn't join to this one, because if you join it to this one, then this note becomes a semiquaver. But in the original music, it's not a semiquaver, it's just a quaver. So that's why the beam here doesn't extend up to this one. And then the next one also is a semiquaver, which has two beams, the main one and then the shorter one. So sometimes you see music that looks like this. The beams are just a cleaner way, basically, of writing a piece of music that looks like this. Okay. All right. We have 3 minutes to go. Okay. So far you've seen that it's just arithmetic, simple arithmetic. One whole note is equal to two half notes. Okay, a whole note, two half notes. A half note plus 2 quarter notes, oops. A half note plus 2 quarter notes is also equal to a whole note. So this is a half note plus 2 quarter notes. 2 quarter notes is equal to a half note. So two half notes, a half note and 2 quarter notes is equals to 1 whole note. 4 eighth notes, so that's quavers, 4 quavers is equal to 1 half note or a minim. Okay, so this is a half note. 4 eighth notes gives you a half. Is that clear? Any questions?
Yes, sir. No.
Okay, so let's quickly look at this exercise quickly. So if you have a whole note is equal to how many quarters? Who can tell me? Archippus. 1 whole note is equal to how many quarter notes?
2 half notes.
Sorry?
Two half notes.
No, we are looking at quarters here. So look at this one, look at here. So a whole note is equal to how many quarter notes?
2 quarter notes.
Are you sure? Try again. Remember, a quarter is 4, right? A quarter is 1/4, right?
Oh.
So if a whole note, so you have a whole note, so how many quarters make a whole?
4 quarters.
Exactly. So a whole note is equal to 4 quarters. Now, what is the symbol of the quarter note? Okay. If you remember, the quarter note looks like is a black note, so it's shaded, and it's got a stem, right? So 4 of these is equal to 1 whole note. That's the quarter note. Apologies for my drawing. This is shaded. Okay, so 1 whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes. Now let's do this one. Temperance. 1 half note is equal to how many quarters? This one.
1 half note.
Yes, is equal to how many quarters?
That is 2. Okay.
Good, 100%. 2 quarters. So this is a half note. That's what the half note looks like. A half note has 2 quarters. So a quarter is, with the quarter notes again, is the shaded symbol followed by the stem, and another shaded symbol followed by the stem. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Newton. Are you there? Okay, so let's try the next one. A whole note is equal to how many eighth notes? Can you try? So one easy way to calculate this, a whole note is 1, right? It's just, if you just take that as 1. And then if you remember arithmetics and fractions in your school, okay? How many, and you're trying to find how many eighths make up 1. How many eighths do you need to add to give you 1? So an eighth is 1/8, right? How many eighths do you need to add up to give you 1 whole note?
8.
Exactly, you're correct. So a whole note is equal to 8 eighths. Is that clear? And remember, what is the eighth? So if we want to draw that, so that's our whole note here. Oops. Let me clear that. So our whole note is here. So the eighth note is, remember the eighth note from our class? The eighth note is also called the quaver, right? This is the quaver. It's the black note with the stem. It's an eighth note. So we need 8 eighth notes to give us 1 whole note. So this is 1 with the stem, 2 with the stem. Just I apologize for my drawing. Yeah? It's not going to be perfect. So the stem. This is number 4 with the stem. 5 with the stem. 6 with the stem. 7 with the stem. And 8. So 1 whole note is equal to 8 eighth notes. All right. Are we following? Now, let's see. Dunsin. Let's try this one. A half note, 1 half note is equal to a quarter note plus how many eighth notes? So a quarter note plus how many eighth notes? Can you try?
6.
Sorry?
Is it 6, sir?
No, try again.
No.
Okay, let's try this. Let's do it. Let me explain it this way. So you want to basically, this is the half note, right? You want to split it into 1 quarter and a number of eighths, but you don't know how many eighths. So first of all, we know that, let's break this down step by step. You have a half note. What is the next note lower than the half note? If this is a half note, what is the next note? What's the next subdivision? How can you divide this equally? What notes will you divide this equally to give you the half note?
2 quarters.
2 quarters, exactly. So you have 2 quarters. So I'm just drawing it here with green. So that's a quarter. So it's a shaded black with a stem. Okay. So 1 quarter plus another quarter gives you a half. So we already have solved the first one. So we're not solved, but we already have the 1 quarter. So a half note is a quarter plus a quarter. but now they're asking us for the eighth now. So that means we now need to subdivide this second one, subdivide it to get the next subdivision, the next note that gives us 1/4 note. So the next note is a quaver, or an eighth note, which is a black note with a stem. Now, how many eighth notes would give you one of these quarter notes?
I think 4.
Nope. It's going to be 2.
Oh,
Remember, you need how many? Basically, think about it this way. You want to get a quarter note. Hey, my drawing is becoming very ugly. Okay, so let me draw this again. So you're trying to figure out, this is a quarter note. Okay. Now you want to now figure out how many eighth notes do you need to add to give you a quarter. So think about it this way. You have a quarter note. A quarter note is 1/4, right? Is equal to how many eighth notes do you need to add? 1/8 plus 1/8 plus. How many of them do you need to add like that to give you a quarter?
2.
2.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys have done fractions yet in school. 1/8 plus 1/8. If you take the lowest common denominator, that's an 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1 times 1, 1 plus 8 divided by 8 is 1 plus times 1 is 1. So 1 plus 1 divided by 8 is 2/8. If you reduce this in mathematics, 2 divides here 1, 2 divides here 4, which is equal to 1/4. And that's how we come to the quarter there. So it's telling us that you need 2 eighth notes to make 1/4 note. That's what we have here. So the answer here is 2 eighth notes. And the symbol that we've already started drawing it here, the 1/4 looks like this. 1/4, so it's the black note with the stem. The 2 eighth notes is the black note. Sorry, it's black. Don't worry, I'm drawing in green just to explain so that you can see the difference. It's a black note with a stem and a tail. A black note with a stem and a tail. Is that clear? Is everybody following, or is anyone getting confused? Do you need me to go back to explain something? So I'm assuming everyone is clear on this. Okay. If you have a question, just raise your hand. So let me erase this now. So we've done this. Okay. Now let's go to Darasimi. Let's try this one. So 4 16th notes is equal to 1 what?
Crochet.
Are you sure?
Minim. I'm not sure.
You're not sure. I was just testing you. Okay, it's a simple, this one is a simple math, this is simple mathematics, eh? So 4 16th notes. 4, basically this is saying 4 multiplied by, one way, this is just a mathematical way of looking at it. 4 times 16th. 16th is 1 over 16. Okay? 4 times 1 over 16 is equal to, let me write here, 4 times 1 over 16 4 times 1 over 16 is equal to 4 divided by 16. Okay? If you reduce this to the lowest fraction, I think that's the correct term, I can't remember. 4 goes here 1, 4 goes here 4, and this is equal to 1 over 4. So 4 16th notes is equal to 1 quarter. And the quarter is, so here we can say it's 1 quarter. And yes, you are right. The quarter is also called the crotchet. I was just making sure you're confident. Okay, so 4 16th notes is equal to 1 quarter. And what does the quarter look like? It's just the crotchet. So it's shaded black with a single stem. Okay. Do we understand how I got to this quarter, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who haven't I called? Who hasn't answered this exercise? Temperance.
Yes, sir, you called me.
Did I call you? Okay, who haven't I
Yes,
called?
sir.
Newton.
No, they called you, sir. Shut up.
Okay. Anyway, let's continue. So I want you now to try this on your own. But before we go ahead, I hope I'm making sense with these fractions, eh? Do you guys do fractions at school?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Newton, have you done fractions at school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all this thing I'm saying is not strange. That's good. All right, so if you've done this, now let's all now do this one. I'll give you 5 minutes to give me what's the answer for this one. 4 8 plus 1/2, which is basically, this is the drawing here. Let me use a different color. So let's do this one. Let's try this one. The orange. So the orange, 4 8s. These are 8th notes because they've got this black note with a stem and a flag, but the flags are just connected by a beam. Okay. 4 8s plus 1/2 note, which is this one, is equal to how many? 1 what? So basically fill in the blank here. Can we try that? If you have if you're finished, just raise your hand so that I know that you're finished. Okay, Temperance and Archippus are done. Are both of you done, or just who is done?
I think it's 1 note.
Sorry, come again.
I think it's 1 note.
Yeah, done.
One what?
Note.
One note. What is a note? You need to define.
Oh yeah, and
What type?
oh, yeah,
What type of note is it?
whole note.
A whole note. Okay. So Archipas says a whole note. Archipas says. I'm just gonna say Archipas says it's a whole note. Okay. Let's see. Temperance, are you done?
No, I'm still working on it.
Okay. Who else has finished? If you finish, just leave your hand up. So Archippus says let's see what the others say. Newton, are you done? Okay, Darasimi and Dunsin. Okay, which of you is done?
I'm done, sir. Darasimi.
Okay, so what's your answer?
I think it's a whole note too.
Okay, Darasimi says it's a whole note. Dunsin, are you done?
No, she's not.
Okay. Newton, are you done?
No, sir.
Okay. Temperance, are you done?
I'm almost done, sir.
Okay.
I know about it too.
Newton, are you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what's your answer?
One over 32.
Okay, so you're saying, so Newton says that the answer is 1 over 32. So you could, that's a, in music terms, that is a 32nd second note, okay? We're still waiting for Dunsin and Temperance. Okay, I think our time is gone, so let's round up. All right, so
Sir, the answer is 1.
one what?
A whole note.
So what you're saying it's a whole note, one whole note, okay? That's a who? Temperance.
Yes, sir.
Whole note, okay. Dunsin, do you have an answer? Hmm? We can't hear you.
I also think it's that, sir.
It's what?
The whole note, sir.
Whole note, okay. All right, so let's see who is correct now. Let's follow along. Just pay attention and follow along as we do this together. All right. I'm going to clean this so that we have space at the top here. Okay, so the question is, when you have 4/8 notes in music, and the 4/8 notes look like this, plus you have the 1/2 note here, what is that equivalent to? Is 1 what? So that's the question we want to find out. So let's start with the 8th notes. 4/8, remember 8th, not 8, eh? 8th, the TH at the end means that it's a fraction. So 4/8 means 4/8 notes. So when you have 4, another way you could do it, let me do it this way. You have 4/8 notes. So 1/8, 4 times, plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. That is the first 4/8 notes here. Okay, then you have a plus, you have a half note here. This is a half, so you have a plus a half, which is 1/2. But now the question is, now you need to sum this up and solve it to now figure out what is this answer here. So 4/8 notes, another way to write it is 4 multiplied by 1/8. 4 multiplied by 1/8 gives you 4/8 plus a half. Okay, we can reduce this 4/8 to be equal to, if you divide this by 4 here, you get 1 here. If you divide 8 by 4 here, you get 2. So you actually end up with half plus a half. And a half plus a half gives you what? 1. Okay? So 1 what basically is the question? Well, because we've added this up together and it gives us 1, the 1 is equal to a whole note. Because remember, the whole note represents the note by which other notes are named. So when you do this and you get a 1, it means that It's a whole note. So the answer here is a whole note. And then how do you draw the whole note? The whole note, simply an open round shape. Like that. Okay, is that clear with everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's music, and that's how to know what we just did here is just an exercise to get you familiar with whole notes, quarter notes, half notes, and how they combine, so that when you see a piece of music, you know that whenever you see a group of, let's say, quarter notes following each other, you'll know that a group of quarter notes is the same duration as one whole note. If you see two quarter notes following each other, it's equivalent to having just one half note. Okay? If you see eighth notes following each other in a piece of music, you know that when they follow each other, the duration is the same as the duration of one whole note. That's what the equal to sign means. When you see one quarter note followed by two eighth notes, the duration of these together is the same as the duration of one half note. That's what basically they're saying. Okay? And 4/16 notes together has the same duration as one quarter note. So that's what it's about. So let me just erase this so that this is clear. In case you want to copy this down. So we can delete that, delete. Okay, so that's the answer to our exercise there. Okay, so we've come to the end of our class today. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so in summary, can I clean this off? Have you copied this down? Can I clean it off? Okay. All right, so in summary, we've looked at music notes. And we said that the music notes are symbols that are used to represent the music sounds. And the note is characterized by the pitch, how high or low the sound is, the duration, how long it lasts. And then the pitch is denoted by, you know the pitch by looking at the clef and the key signature and where the note is positioned on the staff. The duration of the note is determined by the tempo of the music, the key signature, the time signature, which is these numbers here, and also the shape of the note. Okay, so if you remember back in the beginning, this is a minim or a half note. This is a crotchet or a quarter note. This is an eighth note or a quaver. This is also a quaver. They've been joined together by a beam. But because they're joined together by one beam, it makes both of them quavers. You understand? So sometimes this is what you would typically see in music. So now the minim takes 2 beats in this case. This case, the crotchet takes 1 beat, and then the quaver takes half beats. We'll come to how I determine that, but just know that the shape of the note will tell you how many beats you're supposed to play on this piece of music. So for example, to give you an example, if you're singing this note and we are using la la, then the first one, because it's 2 beats, is going to be la 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 la. That's how you sing that. La, oops, la, 2 beats. So 1, 2. You'll sing this minim for 2 beats. You'll sing this crotchet for 1 beat, and then you sing this for half beats. So la 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 la. So that's basically how you recognize the note and the duration. All right, so we've looked at the shape of the note, what it looks like. We've labeled them, so you should be able to know that. And then we've now looked at the duration of all the notes, of the main notes we have, the 8 type of notes we have. We looked at the semi-breve, or the whole note, the breve, or the double whole note, the minim, the crotchet, the quaver, the semi-quaver, the demi-semi-quaver, and then the hemi-demi-semi-quaver. Okay, so we've come to the end of our class today. Sorry, we took longer than normal. So next week we'll now talk about rests, because notes will tell you where you're supposed to sing or where you're supposed to play and for how long. The rests will tell you when you're supposed to keep silent and for how long, and those two also have their symbols. So that's what we're going to consider next time. All right. Darasimi, can you round us up in prayer?
In Jesus' name, Lord, we thank you for this time that we've used to learn. Lord, we pray all that we have learned, so we pray that you will help us to remember it. We pray for our teacher that you have used to teach us, so we pray that you bless him, Jesus. As we go, we pray that your blessing will be upon us in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name we've prayed. Amen.
Amen.